Dear students, welcome to the practical computing class, and today we have our third lecture. So the title of this lecture is shown here. So I will teach you how to use some basic functions in Microsoft Excel. So I think you know what is a function. So of course we will talk about some functions which can be computed in Excel, right? Not only in mathematics. So first of all, I would like to inspire you with the following quotation of a famous person. His name is Nelson Mandela. So he said that if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. So it's important to learn not only foreign languages, but also your own native language. So please don't forget about this. The learning objectives are shown here. First of all, we will learn the syntax of a function. Syntax. I think you don't know what is a syntax. Syntax of a function. Every function have specific way of how we can write it. So some functions have no arguments, so it means we will write in parentheses, but we will keep nothing here. Some arguments, some functions, they have one argument, so in parentheses we will write only one thing. Some functions have several actually arguments. All these are depending on the syntax. So today we will discuss syntaxes of various functions. So also often when we compute in Microsoft Excel, we may have some error values. So you also need to understand what is an error value. So error values are often arise when we compute not only in Excel but also in MATLAB, in Maple, in other programming languages. So you need to understand how to detect errors and how to deal with them, how to understand them. So we will discuss different useful functions, and of course we will do some examples and exercises. First of all, dear students, again, I would like to remind you some important terms which we use during this lecture. So if you have not studied the terms, terminology, then I suggest you to stop this video and first of all to understand and to memorize these words. So now I will again remind you that we do this as you remember. So we have some specific terminology which students need to understand. So this is, I call this glossary, but in fact this is frequency dictionary. So that means the words which are on the top, so they often arise in my lectures and in a corresponding chapter of your textbook. So for example, these words are very popular here. So function, formula, number, figure, return, cell, of course. So you need to provide a correct translation. So cell is not a prison cell here, it's something different. So cell is located in the intersection of row and column, right? So if you select column C, and third row, right, in the intersection you will have a cell. So C3 is a cell. It's not related to prison, but cell has of course different meanings. Please don't forget that in English language is very common. One word may have different meanings. All right, so please study this terminology. This is very important. So you need to do this for every week before you read or study or watch YouTube video. So you need to understand these words. Without understanding, you cannot understand these lectures. This is impossible. All right, Just an overview. You know that actually in Excel you can find a lot of functions. But for example, Excel 2013 provides over 450 worksheet functions. So there are more than 450 functions, 50 of which are new to Excel 2013. In 2016 you will find some additional functions. So the total number is higher than 500. So if you want to use these functions, if you want to successfully use them, you need to understand and you need to remember their names. So functions are divided into 13 groups. So we have 13 categories. We have compatibility, cube, database, date and time. Also we have engineering functions, financial, information, logical, lookup and reference, and also other functions such as mathematical or statistical. So we will study, I think, most of these functions. You can find them in our textbook. Also, if you remember, I have shared a file to you where you can find more than 120 functions. So these functions are very important for us. So a very good question arises. So how we should consider a function in Microsoft Excel or maybe any other programming language? So to understand this, I think first of all you need to know what is a function. So I will give you a simple reminder. So if you remember, so you have studied functions in the field of mathematics, right? So let's say you're writing something like this, f of x, right? F of x. So f is a function, right? F is a function. And so x is what? Is the argument of function, argument. So here, so function has only one independent variable or argument, or sometimes we call this independent variable. Okay, variable. So here we have only one independent variable. So if you know the value of x, you can easily compute the value of f of x. For example, let's define a function in this way. F of x is equal to x squared, right? So if you know such a relationship, then you can easily compute f of 2, right? F of 2 is equal to what? 2 squared, right? 2 squared. And is equal to 4. So again, 2 is an argument or independent variable, or you can also call this input. So 2 is an input and 4 is output, right? Output. So it's very easy to deal with such functions if you have only one argument. So now let me delete this. Okay, I'll clear it. So now let me define a function in this way. So function z is depending on x and y now, okay? So this is a function of two independent variables, or you can say we have two arguments. So we have two arguments, okay? So two independent variables are separated by comma, right? So here we use a comma. So and function name is z or z, right? So if you know the values of x and y, then you can input into expression and find the value of function z or z. Let me give you one small example. So z of x y equal to x squared plus y, okay? So we have such an equation. So how to compute z of 2, 1? So that means we need to input 2 instead of x and 1 instead of y, right? So let's do this. So 2 is x, so 2 squared plus y. Y is 1, right? Y is 1 here. So the answer is 5, right? So x and y are input here, input, and z or z is output, okay? Output. So in the same way, we may have functions with more than 2 arguments. So we may have functions with 10, 15, or 100 arguments. Such functions are often used, especially in the field of mathematical statistics. Let me give you an example. Let's write a function f, and so the arguments are x1, x2, then until xn, right? So where n is what? Is a number from a set of positive integer numbers. So it means n can be 10, 2, 100, 1 million. So if you define function in such a way, so all these are arguments or independent variables. Okay, independent variables. So if you define a function in such a way, then you can have n number of inputs to compute the value of a function f. So something similar happens in Excel or any other programming languages. So where we can define a function, or function is already defined, and we need to mention its arguments. So I hope you understand what is an argument. In Microsoft Excel, arguments are contained within parentheses. Okay, this is a very good term, parentheses. Okay, so please don't forget, because I will always use parentheses, or sometimes we have parentheses which are called brackets. Okay, brackets. For example, square brackets. We don't say square parentheses, but square brackets. So arguments are contained within parentheses, so we have to write them inside parentheses. And in the English language version of Excel, they are separated by commas. Okay, so you know what is a comma. So it's exactly the same as I have written recently by using comma. So x1, comma, x2, comma, x3, and comma, comma, comma until xn, right? So in some other versions which are not in English, right? So some other symbols like semicolons can be used. Semicolon. But in our case, at least in my case, I use an English version of Microsoft Excel, and arguments will be separated by commas. So the number and types of arguments, for example, cell reference or range reference or text or number, Boolean term, depend on the syntax of the function. So syntax is the way how arguments of function should be written. So please don't forget this. Now let's consider a very simple function, so which is known as sum function. So I think you understand what is sum. It means plus, right? To add something. For example, 1 plus 2 plus 3. So we call this operation as summation. Summation. Or you can also say addition. Addition is, I think, addition is more popular term. Addition. Okay, so now please look here. So first of all, it's very important to note that if you want to do any computations in Excel, then you have to start your formula with equal sign. Okay, I will not write equal sign before the function, but you need to understand that equal sign always exists here. This is an equal sign, okay? Equal sign. Without equal sign, nothing will be computed. So then, so we will write the function itself. So you can use small letters or capital letters. So also acceptable. So the name of function is sum. Then, so we need to write down some numbers here. For example, number 1, then 2, right? And let's say 3, right? So we can add more numbers here. So as a result, what will we have? We will have the sum, right? For sum, we use capital sigma, usually in maths. We will have 1 plus 2 plus 3 will be equal to what? To 6, right? Sigma means sum, capital sigma. So the square brackets around the second argument, so here, right, indicate that it's optional, while the 3 dots tells us that we may add more arguments if needed. So it means we can continue and add more arguments. So one argument is compulsory here, so we need to have something here. Second one is optional. So now I will show you how some function works on practice. So let's open my Excel worksheet, and I will firstly try to use it independently of any cell references. So let's say I want to compute it here. So I will again start with equal sign. Don't forget equal sign. Then sum, right? Sum. Also you can see from here that you can see the that from the list, right? Actually, we have several other commands which are similar to sum. For example, sum if and sum ifs. So we also study these functions. So sum. Then what do we need to do is we need to use parentheses. Parentheses. So left and the right parenthesis, right? So we will start with this one. So we can continue writing in a cell, or you can write in here also. You can write in this actually line here in the command line. Let me write here 1. So instead of plus, as you do usually by yourself, when you type yourself, you need to use comma here, comma. So we will use comma here. So then we will write 2, right? Then again, comma. Then what we will do? We will write 3, right? And then we have to close the parentheses, okay? So at the end of this line, you need to press enter. So if you don't press enter, it won't be computed. So let's press enter. So you don't need to use any semicolon here or a full stop at the end of this line. Just type sum 1 comma 2 comma 3, right, and close the parentheses. Enter. So as a result, we have 6, right? We have 6, and then so if you click here, you will see that here we have a formula in this cell. Okay, so this cell does not contain a number, right? It contains formula, first of all. So because in the formula bar, you can find the formula here. So you can also try to copy this formula. So you can copy it. If you copy it, so everywhere you will have only 6, right? Why? Because we don't use any references to the cells here. So we use only numbers, and if you copy them, the result will be exactly the same. So you can copy right, you can copy left, you can copy it up, right? So nothing will change. So we will have exactly the same formula. So this is the first way how we can add numbers. Again, so this operation is called addition. Addition. You can check in the vocabulary. Okay, this is the first way. So now let me show you the next way. Okay, now I will write these numbers in different cells. So 1, enter, 2, enter, and 3. Okay, so cells A1, A2, and A3, they contain my numbers now. So now I want to compute the sum of these numbers. I want to compute the sum. How I can compute it? So I want to have a result in the cell A4 here. So I will start typing with, again, don't forget equal sign, sum, open parentheses. Then I don't need to write 1, 2, 3, and etc., right? Why? Because those numbers are already written here. So instead of writing numbers, I will use references or cell references. Let's say I will first use A1, right, comma, then A2, comma, then A3, right? Again, at the end of this formula, so don't forget to close parentheses. Otherwise, it will not work. Now, if you see the formula bar, right, you will see that we have sum A1, A2, and A3, right? Now let's press enter. Enter. So as a result, we have the answer, which is equal to 6, right? So now let me click on the formula bar, and all the cells A1, A2, and A3 will be highlighted. Okay, so they will be highlighted with some color. For example, A1 is, I think, is something like green, right? A2 is it's like red, and A3 seems like a purple. If you add more cells, so they will have different colors. So it will help to identify what cells are used in computations. Okay, so it's very, very good to know so which cells are used in this formula. So this method is often used, actually very often, I would say, and I suggest you to use this way of computing sums. But you need to be very careful with copying this formula. So now let's copy the formula down here. I will copy it. So do you remember how to copy the formula? First of all, you will select the cell where formula is located. Then on the right bottom corner here, you will see black cross. Okay, now you can see it, right? Then you will drag it down here. You will drag it down 1, 2, 3, for example, until here. Okay, and you can see that the numbers are changing. The question is why? What happens? So if you click here and click on the formula bar, so the cells which are used are highlighted. So we have cell A2, right? We have A3 and we have A4. So instead of adding 1, 2, 3, so in this formula they add 2, 3, and 6. And of course, the result is changing. So the same here. So these cells are moving down. So this happens because I copied the formula so with relative references. So in the last lecture, I have clearly explained you what is the difference between relative references and absolute references. Again, I would like to write it here. So we have relative references, and we have absolute references. Okay, so here, if I want to copy a formula in these cells, I need to use absolute references. Absolute references. Okay, now let's try to somehow modify the formula and copy it once again. So I will delete these results. So I don't need this here. Okay, here I will modify. Instead of A1, I will use dollar sign, then A and $1. Okay, here the same. So I will create an absolute reference. Absolute reference. Okay, now so I will have only absolute references. So if you copy it here, so the formula will not change. Okay, if you copy it here, the formula also will not change. Why? Because references are absolute here. So if you forgot what is relative and absolute references, I suggest you to check my previous videos, and also you can watch some examples which were given. So it's very important to understand this concept. Okay, this is the second way. I hope you understand it, dear students. Now let me delete this. Okay. So now there is an interesting tool. So it is called AutoSum. It is located here. AutoSum. So Home tab. In the Home tab, just move to the right, and here you'll find the AutoSum. Okay, AutoSum. So also under Sum you'll find average, count numbers, max, min, or more functions can be used. So you can use AutoSum. So how to use AutoSum? It's very simple. Please follow my instructions. So first of all, I will select the range which contains numbers which I want to add to each other. I will select it using mouse. So now it's selected. Then I'll click on the AutoSum. Then you can see the answer, right? So this tool automatically adds a given set of numbers. As a result, you will see the formula, right? The formula. So this formula is written in another way, and now we will discuss it. So of course you can write all this by yourself, or you can use AutoSum. Okay, so here, so instead of writing A1, comma, A2, comma, A3, so they simply defined the range of numbers. So by starting from here until here. As a result, we have a range from A1 until A3, right? So all numbers which are within this range will be added, right? Then enter. As a result, you have 6. Now, let's try to copy this formula and see what happens. Yeah, by the way, instead of writing AutoSum, you can write it also by yourself. Equal sum, parentheses, select the range, and close the parentheses. That's all. Very simple. So when you copy this formula, so again, numbers are changing. So that means, absolute references were not used here. So if you don't want this to happen, you need to modify it. You need to modify. Okay, I will modify A1 and until A3. Enter. Okay. The answer is the same, 6. When you copy, nothing is changing, right? So the range is an absolute reference here. So I hope you understand how we can compute sums. Again, we can do this in 3 ways. And also, please don't forget that we have different types of references. So here I use absolute references. Absolute references are good because when you copy your formula, so nothing will change. I will show you once again. I will copy the formula here, and I will paste it here. Okay? I'll paste here. I'll paste here. Control C, Control V. Okay? Everywhere you will have exactly the same formula. Dear students, depending on the function, the number of arguments may be fixed, variable, or even zero. So let's have a look at the following examples. So the first example, actually in this example we have 0 arguments. So what does it mean? So we can write the parentheses, but inside we will have nothing. So it will be empty. Empty. So, or we can say that we have 0 arguments. One of such function is pi function. Pi function. I think you know what is a pi. Pi is actually a very important number in the field of mathematics. As we all know, pi function is a very important constant in the field of mathematics. And if you want to know more about pi function, pi number, so you can visit Wikipedia page and read more. So in the field of mathematics, we have much more constants. So constants are spatial numbers which are computed, and they have some applications in different areas of mathematics. Now, let's try to compute it in Excel. Again, so you will write it in this way. So equal, don't forget to start with equal, and only then you can write the function itself. Again, it does not have any arguments, so we can say it has 0 arguments. Okay, I'm returning to Excel here. Let me open the second page and increase the zoom. Zoom out means make smaller, zoom in means make larger. Okay, let me compute pi here, the value of pi. Equal, then pi, okay? Parentheses, so here, parentheses should be empty, because this function, pi function, does not have any arguments. Enter. So as a result, we can compute the value of pi. So now let's try to change the formatting of this cell. I will click on the cell, okay, and then right click here, format cells. Again, right click of your mouse, then you have format cells. Okay. So here I will select number format, and I will select, let's say, 30 decimal places. 30 decimal places, it means 30 digits after the comma, right? Okay, now you can see so 30 digits after the comma, right? This is the comma or point. But very interesting that so what do we have here? We have displayed value, right? This is displayed value. Again, so this value is displayed value. Okay, and this is what actually we have in our formula bar, right? This is the formula. Okay, now please look at this value. So let's count. So we have 30 digits after the comma, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, then 13 and 14, right? So then what happens? Other digits are becoming 0, right? The question is why. So I told you last time, because of mathematical limitations of Excel, right? So it means it has something which is wrong, right? So if you work with large numbers, it can especially make some actually problems with precision, right? So precision is important. Again, you will type pi, no arguments or 0 arguments, and only then you will receive the result. Okay, I hope you understand the concept of function arguments. Again, here, pi function has 0 arguments. The next function, sqrt. So what it stands for? What does sqrt mean? I will translate here, square root, right? Square root. I think you understand square roots from your high school. Yeah, actually Papago gives a good example. So it says that the square root of 64 is equal to 8, right? Why? Because 8 square, or 8 times 8, is equal to 64. I think this is a good example. So in our case, square root function, or sqrt function, will have only one argument. So you can see it in here. Only one argument, and in this case, so A2 means the reference to A2 cell, right? A2 cell. So now let's try to compute by using A2 cell and sqrt function. Okay, in A2 cell, I will store some value. Okay, let's say I want to store 64 in this cell. So the address of this cell is A2, right? Second row and column number A. So value is 64. Also, you can find the address, the cell reference in here, A2. So now, in this cell, I want to compute what is the square root of 64. So I will start with equal sign, sqrt, parentheses, don't forget parentheses. Then I will select A2 cell, A2. Use your mouse and left button, okay? A2. Also, you can write A2 by yourself. Then close the parentheses and don't forget to press on the enter button. Don't use any commas or full stops here or any other symbols which are not necessary. Enter. As a result, I have 8, right? Why? Because 8 square will give you 64. So also we can modify our input. So A2 cell can be modified. Let's say I will type 4. 2, right? Square root of 4 is equal to 2. Okay, 16. 14. Okay, 16. 4, right? 100 should give us what? 10, right? Okay. So, okay. So you can input any number, and as a result, you will compute the square root. Again, to compute square root, we have to use sqrt function. Don't forget, sqrt function has only one input, only one argument. The next function has 2 arguments, and here they are separated by using commas. So you can see here there is a comma here. So this is the first argument and this is the second argument. So again, arguments can be text values, cell references, or numbers. But more important, they are separated by commas here. In the case of one argument, so we cannot find any commas here because we have only one argument. So a round function is a function with two arguments. So I think you understand what does rounding a number mean. If not, please check out here. I'm going to show you some examples from which you can understand what is an operation of rounding. Okay, round a number or rounding a number. Okay, let's return to my Excel worksheet and I will use a round function. Okay, so let me modify the cell A2. Let's say instead of 5, I will have 1.25. Okay, so now I want to round it. Again, dear students, if you don't understand any function, then I suggest you to use this tool, insert function. In the insert function, you will type your function here. For example, round. Okay, round. I'm typing round here. Then press go button. Okay, and here you will have round function in this list. Okay, so here you will find some information about this function. So rounds a number to a specified number of digits. So what does it mean? So it has two arguments. So the first argument we have to use number, and only then we should define number of digits, right? Number of digits. So if you don't understand this, I suggest you to click on the help of this function. You'll click here, and so there will be a help window here, okay? Help window, which explains around functions. So there is a description here, okay? Description here, and also you can find the syntax. So both of actually arguments are required. So it means you need to use two arguments. You cannot use only one argument. So first of all, you need to input the number you want to round, right? And then number of digits required. So the number of digits to which you want to round the number argument. Also, there are some remarks here, so you can also read them. And what is important, we have very good and simple examples. So, for example, formula, this one, 2.15, rounds 2.15 to 1 decimal place. Okay, to 1 decimal place. We'll use only 1 decimal place, this one, right? So it will round 2.15 to 1 decimal place. So 2.15 will become 2.2. Why? So because here we'll have 5, right? If we have 5, 6, etc., so we will increase the number, right? For example, here, round to 149, and number of digits is 1 here. It will round 2.149 to 1 decimal place, to this decimal place, right? Since we have 4 here, so here we will have 1, right? If we have 5 here, then we will have 2 here. So I think you understand what is rounding. Now let me close it, and I will show you some examples in my worksheet. Okay, round, okay. So you can select a number. In my case, number is located inside cell A2, right? I will select A2. And number of digits. I want to use 1 digit, 1 decimal place. 1. As a result, I have 1.3. You can find the answer here. 1.3. So why 1.3? Because I want to have only 1 digit, right? And since here, after the first digit, we have 5, so it will be increased to 3, right? From 2 we have 3. So let me do one more example. Okay, I will erase it. Let's say here I have a number, and here I have rounding. Okay, I will define 1.11, then 1.12, 1.13, right? 1.14, 1.15, 1.16, 1.17, 1.18, and 1.19. Okay, that will be enough for me. So I will apply rounding to these numbers. So first of all, let me write only one function. Again, round. Don't forget, round function has 2 arguments. So the first one is a number. In my case, is cell C3, right? C3. Then, after a comma, I need to use 1 digit. Okay, I will select 1. 1, closed parenthesis, and enter. Okay. So the second digit is 1 here, so it will disappear, right? So I can compute the same things for the rest of the cells, but it will take a long time. I think therefore it's easier to copy cells, right? It's easier to copy my formulas. Now, first let's think. So if I copy this formula, what will happen? So C3 is what? Is not absolute reference here. So if you make it absolute, let's say I will make it absolute. Okay, enter. And then I copy it here. Then nothing will change. But in our case, number should change, input should change, right? So instead of C3, I should have C5 here, right? C5. So therefore, I will delete this, and I will again remove absolute reference here and use relative reference. Okay, enter. Now, you will simply select your cell here on the right hand side, and you will copy down the formula. Okay, so this is the answer. So if the second digit is 1, 2, 3, or 4, the first digit cannot be increased to 2. Okay, it cannot be increased to 2. But if the second digit is 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, then the first digit will be increased to 2. So this operation, again, is called rounding. So I hope you understand what does rounding mean. Also, we may have more than 2 arguments. For example, you can see here, I use 2 commas, right? The first argument is a range of cells. Then the second argument is 1 cell, and the third argument is actually the third argument. Again, here we have only 1 cell. So don't forget, dear students, arguments should be separated by using commas. Okay, if you don't use comma, so then you won't have any arguments. So another question, limits on arguments. So what are the limits? What is the maximum number of arguments in functions? So when the number of permitted arguments is variable, the maximum number is 256. So that means, let's say you want to add 256 numbers, so then how you will write sum function? You'll start with sum, right? Sum, then open parentheses, then the first number, say 1, right, comma 2, right, 3, then until 256, right? You cannot add more arguments. So if you have 256 arguments, you will have 255 commas, okay? Commas. Don't forget this. So instead of numbers, again, you can use cell here, for example, A1, right? Or you can use a range of cells, for example, A1 to A10, right? So it will be considered as one argument. So again, note that the range such as A1 to A100 counts as one argument, not 100 arguments. So number of arguments is maximum can be 256. So you will use 255 commas. Okay, the next important thing we need to discuss is nesting. So first of all, I want to explain you what is a nest. Nest, right? Oh yeah, even you can see some examples. So birds live in nests, right? Is a kind of house which is made by a bird, and so bird is placing its eggs into a nest, right? So let's say if we have a nest, right? This is a nest. So here, bird will have some. They put some eggs right here, like this. Okay. So eggs are nested. So in the same way, we can use nesting of functions. Okay. So let's say you will have a round function. This is a round function, round. And inside round function, you will place square root function, SQRT function. Okay. So you will place a SQRT function inside round function. One good example here. So firstly, of course, we'll start with equal sign, then round. This is round function is here. And inside this round, we will place SQRT function. So as you can see from here, actually round function has two arguments. Please don't forget. So it means we need to have one comma here. So this is the first argument. And this is the second argument. Okay, the first and the second argument. It should have two arguments. So as a first argument, we may use not only numbers, not only references, or not only a range of references, but also we can use another formulas in here. So this process is known as nesting. So again, the first argument contains another function. So we refer to this as nesting. Nesting is a very important term. So if you want to create powerful functions, then you need to know what is nesting. Because powerful functions, they are usually very complex. So all versions after ECCET 2007 allow nesting to 64 levels. It means we can nest one time, then inside this function you can nest another function too. Inside another function you can nest the third function, so until 64 levels. So this will help us to write very complex functions. And actually this is the reason why we need to create them. Why? To solve complex problems, right? To solve complex problems. Without nesting, I think it's very hard to create some great function. Okay. Now, let me show you one more example. You already know what is an SQRT function. If not, you can simply insert function from here and look for SQRT. So when you search for a function, you don't need to use equal sign here. Just type the name of the function and click go, right? So then you can call the help for sqrt function, and you can get some useful information. Okay, now let me compute something. Okay, let's say in this cell I will store some value, let's say 16. Okay, here I will write sqrt function and use cell reference as actually A2, right? A2 and close parenthesis and use enter. So then what we'll have? We'll have answer which is equal to 4, right? To 4. So square root of 16 is equal to 4. Why? Everyone knows this. I think if you compute square root of 16, right, you will write it as square root of 4 times 4, right? Or 4 square, and the answer is 4, right? So it's very simple. So now let me modify actually the input. So the cell A2. Instead of 16, well, let me use something different. For example, I will use, I will type tegu, enter. So in the output, what do I have? I have something strange here. I have something strange, right? So the symbol and then value. Okay, let me again modify. Instead of 16, let me use minus 16. And there is another value. Actually, what kind of value? Here we have num, right? Num. So it's quite interesting, but if you do something wrong, I think you will have some spatial value which is known as error value. So here you can find the translation, error value. I think you know what is a value and you know what is an error. So if a syntax rule is not followed, for example, instead of 2 arguments, you can input only 1 argument. So the formula will return an error value. One good example was given. So if you compute a square root of actually non-numerical value like tegu, right, then you will have some error value. Firstly, we have value, right, error. Then we have num error. So all these are known as error values. So while rounding, as you remember, we have used 2 arguments. You can see them from here, C3 and 1. So now let me intentionally make some mistake here. So in the round function, as I mentioned before, we should use 2 arguments. So now I will remove the second argument. I will remove it and check what happens. Enter. So as a result, there is a notification from Excel which says that you have entered too few arguments for this function. Okay? Too few arguments. So now let me use 1 here and I will add a third argument, let's say 2, and enter. As a result, again, I will have some actually notification. Again, I have entered too many arguments for this function. So I have to use only two arguments, okay? Okay. Now let me copy it again, and in some cases let me modify it. Instead of 1.12, well, let me use something like a text here. I'll use a text. As a result, we will have error value here, error value. Also, I can use some other cell format, for example, like a date. Let's say I will use a date here, 2020, 11. Okay. Now I'm using a date here, and as a result, I have something strange, right? But still, it's not an error value. But here we have an error value. This is value error.